Hi, it's Scott. ROCKFILE back with another podcast review for you. Let's talk about the 1982 film Creepshow. Haven't really thought about these movies in years, but not too long ago, Walmart had an exclusive steelbook of this, and I picked it up and finally watched it in time for October. Now the steelbook is getting a wide release. It went out of print when it was Walmart exclusive, but now you can pre-order it from several retailers and pay a little bit more for it than most of us paid at Walmart. Creepshow was the combination of George A. Romero and Stephen King. On paper, that is incredible. You got the guy who directed Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead, and you've got Stephen King, author of some of the greatest horror stories of all time. And the movie came out pretty well, actually. They were trying to do a throwback thing. It's kind of a series of short stories all held together with a prologue and an ending and some stuff in between. And the first one is much better than the second one, I think. And there actually was a third one and a TV series. But the first one, you've got Hal Holbrook and Adrienne Barbeau, Fritz Weaver, Leslie Nielsen, Carrie Nye, E.G. Marshall, Vivica Lindfors. There's a lot of stars in here. Stephen King wrote the stories. Like I said, George Romero directed it, and they would go on to work on the second film as well. And the cinematographer, Michael Gornick, would direct the second one. And that'll be my next podcast review because I just watched the new Arrow release of this. In 4K, this movie looks amazing for its time. It wasn't a big budgeted film. It was budgeted at $8 million, went on to make 21, so it was almost a hit. A lot of colors. There is some grain to this film because it wasn't a big budgeted film, but the colors, the HDR does an amazing version. Shout Factory's version not only looks and sounds great, but it's got a lot of extras on it too. If you're a fan of this film, then I think you should pick up the Shout Factory edition in 4K. It's the best it's ever going to look. Watching it now, some of the episodes are better than others with any of these kind of collections of short stories, these anthologies like the VHS movies and stuff. I like the idea of it, but the same thing with a book of short stories. Some stories are always going to be better than others. Some are going to hit you better than others. And it's the same thing with like horror movies where you let these different kind of stories play out in a longer form thing. So I did find some stories better than others, but overall I found the acting quite good in this. For everybody seemed to know what they were in for. They were making kind of a cheesy, kind of a throwback to old horror movie kind of things with a dun 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 and freeze frames that go into color into a comic book scene and then goes into the next. It was all really well put together, and you could see why this launched an entire franchise. Actually, I think the directing is good, but it's George Romero. I mean, he was one of those guys who changed things, in the movie industry, but I don't consider him like the Martin Scorsese of horror movies. He was very good, but, his directing skills were what they were. I remember having a copy of the paperback book, The Stand, from Stephen King, and it said, soon to be a motion picture by George A. Romero. That never got off the ground, but it would have been interesting, right? The Stephen King stories work. I mean, it's got the writing and the characters like any Stephen King story. And then you've got George A. Romero directing something that was a little out of his wheelhouse. They were trying to do something different here and do kind of a throwback to anthology series. And they did a great job with it. They created a host that's gone on. They created Tom Savini did some great effects for both of the movies, a lot of practical effects. And the movie plays kind of kitschy, kind of cheesy now, but it is a product of its time. So again, if you're a fan of Creepshow, the first movie is what it should be. I rate it probably a B if we were going to an A to F scale. It sets out to do what it does, and it does it well. I thought Creepshow looked great, sounded great in 4K. Shout Factory did a great job, and overall, I have to give it 2 thumbs up. Now we'll get into Creepshow 2 in the next review, and we'll talk about that one. Scott, I'm ROCKFILE. More podcasts are on the way, more horror movies through October. I'm trying to catch up to get 31 done in the month. We'll see if I can do that. Stick with me. Please like, share, and subscribe, and have a spectacular day.